All right. Looks like most people are logged on, so we'll go ahead and get started. And I apologize if anyone catches this a little bit late, but the important stuff will be coming up, so you'll be all good. But thanks everyone for joining us today. We are the Friends of the Boundary Waters, as you know. We have a really exciting programs for you today. We're be joined by former Governor Arne Carlson, as well as three of the new state senator-elects who are going to be going to the Capitol next year. All three of these women were endorsed by us. They're Boundary Waters champions, and we're really excited to hear from them and get a little bit more about what's going on. First, just so everyone knows, we're really a place-based organization, and we focus on three things: wilderness, people, and community. That means protecting the wilderness from what we view as existential threats of twin metals and polymet. That means supporting the people that live there and finding sustainable economic development solutions that don't pollute Lake Superior and the Boundary Waters. And that means being a part of the community, being a part of the wilderness edge communities and supporting them and in whatever ways we can. So those are really the three things that the Friends focuses on. Today, we're going to talk more specifically about the threats of the wilderness from pollution from copper sulfide mining. Many people know where you say two mines, one threat. There's two copper mines that are proposed. This type of mining has never been done anywhere before without polluting, and it's never been done in Minnesota, period. So we're against both twin metals that threatens the future of the Boundary Waters, and polymet, which threatens the future of Lake Superior, the St. Louis River, and the drinking water of the Fond du Lac Man and the city of Duluth. So those are very crucial issues. That's why we fight. We love the Boundary Waters in Lake Superior. If you're on this call, I don't think I need to pitch you on that. So without further ado, we like to get into the program. We have former Governor Arne Carlson, governor for most of the 90s, great champion for Minnesota's clean water. We also have Jen McEwen, state Senate-elect. I guess maybe I'll just go ahead and jump the gun and call you all state senators. State Senator McEwen, coming from Duluth. Jen is a really awesome Boundary Waters champion, and she ran against a pro-copper mining incumbent and handily defeated him, which we believe shows the power of these positions. We also have Senator Lindsey Port. Lindsey ran a really tough race down in Burnsville. She is a great Boundary Waters champion, and she's someone that we're really looking forward to working with. And we know that she's going to bring a lot to the table. So really excited to work with her. And finally, we have Ann Johnson Stewart. Ann ran out in Wayzata. She is also a Boundary Waters champion. She's a longtime educator and civil engineer. And I appreciate that when I was asking Ann about these issues, she was really giving me the engineering questions. So she made me work for it. So I appreciate that. So we're really excited to have all of them here today. And, I know that I am the least interesting part of this. So let's get right into it. The first question today, I want to ask for Governor Carlson. Governor, you were obviously at the Capitol for many years, both as governor and as a legislator. What are some of the biggest challenges these new senators can expect to face coming to the Minnesota Capitol in 2021?
Well, first of all, I want to thank your organization, and I mean that most sincerely, for going out and recruiting such a stable of incredibly able talent. I mean, seriously, this is a very impressive trio that we have with us this afternoon, and I know that the public is going to be the huge benefactor of their work. The task before the legislature is highly unusual. First, on the political front, you essentially have a divided Democratic Party and a split House and Senate. And there's really no way, either nationally or on a state level, that anybody can, quote, put it together so that we can go back to what we romantically call normalcy. Sadly, there's going to be a new normal. But I think President-elect Biden has laid the groundwork for a very thoughtful approach. And that approach is an approach I would strongly recommend that the governor deliver in his State of the State. And that is that we are one state ultimately, and its betterment should be the goal that unites everyone. And then toward that end, you've got some problems that have to be tackled. and they have to be resolved by May or June, whenever the legislature closes. The biggest is going to, and most dominant, but by far, is going to be financial. At the moment, we have no idea what kind of help, if any, the federal government will give. But we do know that the deficit for the next biennium is going to be in the vicinity of at least $6 billion. The current deficit in excess of $2 billion. And we know that we have inflation on the income side and no inflation on the spending side. So those numbers are a little bit exaggerated in the wrong direction. At the same time, you have very necessary expenditures coming up in the way of hospitals, particularly rural hospitals that are in very serious financial jeopardy. And they're going to need financial help in the education system because of distance learning is going to be asking, and rightly so, for additional funds. So it's going to require a lot of intelligence, a lot of good creative thinking, and a willingness. And this is what the governor really has to do, is to bring everybody together and agree that on certain issues, let's disagree and whatever, but let's, one, keep our discussion civilized. Let's stay out of the personal arena. And three, let's focus on a solution. So if party A's solution is not acceptable to you, advance party B's solution. Don't come back with just a criticism. Come back with a criticism and a positive alternative. I think if they do that, we can get through the session. But yes, it's going to be painful. But on the other hand, I'm very impressed, and I mean that most sincerely, with the, and encouraged by the talent level. This is good talent level, so I'm optimistic.
Absolutely, and our we certainly agree with that statement. I do just want to add, I should have said in the beginning, once we get through a few questions that we have for the panelists, we will go to audience questions. So please make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box below. All right, the next question is going to be for the state senators. I'll give you each a chance to answer this. I'm going to go to Senator Port first, and she's the closest on the screen. Senator Port, can you tell us, our audience, a little bit more just about yourself, why you wanted to run, and what are some of the priorities heading into your first legislative session?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Thanks so much for inviting me and for all the work that you and all of the Boundary Waters kind of family has done, both to help get me elected and to make sure that we had great partners all across the state. I am Lindsey Port. I'm the Senator-Elect for District 56, which is Burnsville, Savage, and a little slice of Lakeville down in the South Metro. And I ran this time really because my current senator was just not representative of my district. And it really had gotten to a point where we were hearing it from all sides in our district that we needed real representation. And a big part of that was that Dan Hall, the incumbent that I just defeated, does not believe in climate change. He doesn't believe that it exists. He doesn't believe that we have a part of it. And so he was never willing to work towards any solutions for a green economy or putting a stop to some of the things that are most detrimental to our environment. Our district has a really strong, active, just citizen environmental lobby. We just have a ton of folks who that is their number one issue, really protecting our planet and making sure that we are being good stewards of our land, which in Minnesota is really the heart of who we are. So for me, it really was fitting to our district that is, something that I feel really strongly about. And so that is one of the things that, moving forward with my community and with my new partners in the Senate, that I think we'll be able to make a really strong case for why that is Minnesota values and why we need to be investing in those sorts of policies.
Absolutely. Same question for you, Ann, or Senator Stewart, I should say.
We're not really senators yet, so you can call me.
I just wanted you to remember that I was the first one that called you a senator, so.
Well, thank you, and thanks everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to reach this audience, although I know I was interacting with you guys through the campaign. My name is Ann Johnson Stewart. I am a civil engineer. I also own a small company, and I've taught at the university for more than 25 years. I've also taught at Dunwoody and St. Paul Tech. I decided to get involved because of my passion for infrastructure, frankly. And I, about a year and a half ago, the American Society of Civil Engineers rated all of the nation's infrastructure. I was at a presentation and heard about Minnesota's infrastructure, not surprisingly being rated very poorly. I asked how many civil engineers were in the legislature. I found out there was none, so I started to look for somebody who could be that civil engineer, and it turned out to be me. So I feel very strongly that we need more engineers, specifically civil engineers, because so much of what our state government does supports, controls, funds, allows, disallows, those things that I understand, which is civil engineering components. So while I'm passionate about roads and bridges and making sure we have clean water and, excuse me, sewers that are in good condition, I'm also very interested in preserving water and soil quality. One of my areas of expertise is also on workforce development around infrastructure. And so I think I can be well served there. Early in my campaign, I was invited to a Friends of the Boundary Waters event where I learned about the 2 mines. And I came home that night and said to my husband, this is why I'm running. If there's anything more important than saving the boundary waters, I can't imagine what it is. And so I've told people that I will lend my expertise and my skill, frankly, as a teacher of very complex engineering situations, in getting people to understand that there's no 2 sides of this issue. There are many sides of every engineering issue, and it's not will we or won't we, it's how won't we, and how can we look at other options. So I want to lend my engineering expertise, but also my significant experience as an educator to this fight. And I think it's imperative that we stop both mines. It's non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Very well said. And you know, we couldn't agree more, obviously. Senator-Elect McEwen, same question to you.
Thanks so much for having us. And it is really an honor to be on this panel with my future colleagues. And I am it really is such an honor and I'm looking forward so much to working with both Senator-Elect Port and Senator-Elect Johnson Stewart. They're such smart and dynamic and creative people. And I think that we're going to be able to do some really great work together. Yeah, so my own political situation is probably many people who are on this call know it was a little different because I, as you had said, Scott, challenged an incumbent DFL senator who was representing Duluth. And I did that primarily because it became clear over the course of his 4-year term that he was taking some votes and some stances, in particular in regard to the copper sulfide mining issue, or in regard to natural resource issues in general, that were really out of step with where Duluth is. Duluth has a very progressive electorate and also just a very environmentally minded, conscientious electorate. We live in a beautiful city and on a harbor, a port harbor of Lake Superior, on a hill rising up from the lake. Pretty much anywhere in our city, you can turn your head and look out at a beautiful vista of Lake Superior. So we're constantly surrounded by water and living on the water, and we have beautiful parks and woodlands within our city and surrounding our city. So people in Duluth have been paying attention to the copper sulfide mining issue. And I'm so thankful for Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness, which has really hung with us here and stood with the people of Duluth in wanting more information about the PolyMet project, not getting good answers from leadership oftentimes, who've been, I think, in many instances, really just kind of under pressure to remain silent or not speak out because of political pressures or economic pressures that they were feeling. So it has taken a lot of courage from groups like Friends of the Boundary Waters to stick with it and to keep up this fight for more information and fight for transparency about this type of mining and what it would mean for the city of Duluth and the people who live in the St. Louis River watershed and the Lake Superior watershed. So yeah, we were thrilled to be to resoundingly defeat the incumbent in large part based on those environmental issues, of which copper sulfide mining is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I appreciate the kind words, and I know there's some of our staff members that are watching, so I'm sure they'll appreciate it as well. But it really all comes from our members. You know, we have great members. We have really dedicated people. And frankly, the reason that they are members of our organization is because of that, right? They want that from us. And it's probably no surprise that we have quite a few members in Duluth that were helping us, you know, help guide us that decision. You know, and so we're happy to work with all the great groups up there, like Duluth for Clean Water, you know, MCEA is doing some great stuff. You know, all those groups, we're happy to be a part of that. Next question I want to give to Governor Carlson. You know, as we were talking about earlier today, the Minnesota legislature is again going to be divided in 2021. You know, so these senator-elects will be members of the minority caucus. What should these new senators be focusing on to help Minnesota protect its clean water, and how can they be most effective as members of the minority party?
Well, the impression I get over the years in working with environmental groups is that there's a tendency to burrow down into detail, and in the process lose the broad understanding and potential support of the public. I'd like to see the legislature, led by these three excellent state senators, come out with prove it first. It's an understandable piece of legislation. It emanated, I believe, in the state of Wisconsin. It was repealed under Governor Walker. But basically what it does is this. If you want to mine, bear in mind this, we have to establish with the public who owns what. Mm-hmm. The air belongs to the public. The water belongs to the public. And if you want to desecrate it, if you want to harm it, if you want to do anything to it, you do it only with our blessing. I don't have the right to take my garbage and dump it in somebody else's lawn. But that's precisely what happens. And then it's gussied up under well, I'm going to create some jobs. But the truth of the matter is, you're causing irreparable harm to those of us who want to breathe clean air and drink healthy water. Lake Superior is part of the biggest lake system in the world of pure fresh water. No corporation, no business would be foolish enough to place its most prized asset in jeopardy for a handful of jobs or a couple of pieces of silver. But as long as that asset belongs to somebody else, they're perfectly willing to do it. Now, prove it first basically says this. It shifts the burden of proof. Right now, the burden of proof is on the public to prove that the company and its discharges into the air and water and soil will cause damage. We have to prove it at our expense. What nonsense. The burden should be entirely on them. They're petitioning to discharge something into our air and something into our soil and water. And what Prove It First says is, if you claim it's so pure and so healthy, demonstrate where you've mined for 10 years and did it according to your expectations of perfection. It's a simple, understandable law. But I think what the environmental groups and the Senate and House and Governor can do is sell the public on, this is our air. This is our property. And if you want to desecrate it or subject to possible harm, you're only going to do it after you prove that you've done it elsewhere for 10 years without any problems. And if you take a look, and I don't mean to get too long-winded here, but if you take a look at Polymet, the very same dam that burst in Brazil, killing 270 plus people, cost over $5 billion worth of damage, was designed by the same consultant that's designing the one for us. Oh my God, who in the world would want to hire the architect of the Titanic to build another ship without any kind of oversight or even hearings? No. So I think what we can get with this approach is it's not technical, it's not hard to understand, sell it to the public. And the public will invariably say, yes, it's reasonable, why not? And I'd like to see it, frankly, also sold to the Biden administration. What a marvelous, marvelous umbrella for all of us nationally to affect changes in the climate.
Absolutely, Governor Carlson, and you said it, you know, and there's one thing I'll add to that is when we think about this, sometimes we think about this as just a clean water issue, but twin metals and polymet would be two of the largest carbon emitters in the state of Minnesota if they were to become operational. So that's something we want to keep in mind as well. And, you know, I'll just elaborate a little bit on what Governor Carlson is saying. You know, that Prove It First law is really going to be the Friends' #1 legislative priority. And like Governor Carlson said, what it is if you want to get a permit to mine in Minnesota, you need to first show a mine that polluted or that operated for 10 years without polluting and was closed for 10 years without polluting. Because a lot of times what happens with these mines is they'll close them and then there's nobody to keep the upkeep going, right? So they then pollute. And we're really going to be pushing that. We, like you know, we really think it's strong for all the reasons Governor Carlson laid out. We love to hear the Senator-elects kind of, I'll let you choose who wants to go first, but, you know, talk about, do you support Prove It First? And if so, why? And, you know, why is it so important that we stop twin metals and polymet? Maybe I'll call on someone. We can go in the same order if you want.
Yeah, I'll jump in. You know, I think I do support Prove It First. I think it makes a lot of sense. It puts the burden where the burden should be, which is, you know, not on us to prove a negative that we can't prove, but in fact on the mining conglomerates to prove that they can do it without polluting. But I think, you know, we were all certainly hoping to be elected into a majority government, a majority in the Senate, where we could actually really craft strong environmental policy. And that wasn't the case this year. And in the minority, our real power is in our communication. It is in working with the people. It is in building people power and making sure that that power is heard at the legislature and is heard in the governor's office. And you're exactly right, Governor Carlson, is heard in the Biden administration through our federal partners and Congress people here. This is all what our work in the minority is. It's having conversations with the public, it's building strength around this Prove It method, and it's finding these pieces of legislation that we can get bipartisan agreement around. And I think we all are pretty clear that we're not gonna get, you know, a new green economy investment from this legislature. But I do think we can build the support for something like Prove It, where it makes fiscal sense, it's common sense. It is something that's easy for the public to understand and to get behind and to put pressure on both Republicans and Democrats. Those are the pieces of legislation that it's our job to find and to make sure that we are communicating the strengths of them and that we're doing the little pieces around the edges that we can to make sure that nothing catastrophic gets through and that we're moving the legislation we want one piece at a time.
Yeah, I think Lindsey's right. I think one of the challenges of this whole thing is we have let other even non-real arguments into the discussion. Like this is just, as I said before, non-negotiable. So we need to really make sure that our message is our core value is the environment, water, and air and soil. And these are things you can't trade. It's like arguing that your health is negotiable. You cannot be a human being without your health, and we cannot be an earth without soil and water. You know, we just can't exist. So I think we need to stop. This is something I'm really excited about as I enter into this new legislature with Lindsey and others who are really smart, Jen as well, and we've got some others in our little group that are skilled at this, but really framing the discussion. So I was at an engineering meeting and I was a little horrified that some of my colleagues were talking about, well, if we're going to need these metals, we should do it here because then we can keep track of it and we can be in charge. And I said, whoa, stop. No, there's lots of things that we do not allow in our culture or in our society because we're not willing to make that trade. So I am not willing to trade our environment for these metals. And they said, Well, what do you mean? I said, find new metals, find new technology. We don't have to even put that on the table. So a good example is, you know, the cheapest way to make anything is with slave labor. Well, I'm sorry, we're not going to have slaves anymore. So take that off the table. And, you know, for once I had a bunch of engineers kind of like, oh, well, yabba yabba. I mean, I think that's how we have to fight this, is we have to say it's non-negotiable. We all have parents who have said that to us before. We are parents in many cases, and we say no. So we need to craft a message. We need to come up with alternate options for employment. I think that's very real, and that's a concern. But we're not willing to trade our environment for 79 jobs or however many they're proposing. And so I've already talked to Jen about that. I think we can work together to subvert that message and make sure that we focus it on our core value of the health of our, I'm not even going to minimize it, the health of our earth, really. So.
Yeah, I thanks so much for all those thoughts. I think I do support the Prove It First legislation, absolutely. And, you know, I think about the risk that Governor Carlson was talking about earlier. And I have thought about that a lot and talked with people about that a lot. So if we looked at, for example, the PolyMet project, and we thought, you know, should we do this as a community? Should we get at those metals? And would it be a good deal for us to take on that risk to try to get those metals and sell them out on the global supply chain and bring them out to market? Would that be a good deal for us? No, it would be a terrible idea. We would never do that, right? We would never take on that risk for ourselves. And you know what? Glencore wouldn't either. Glencore wouldn't, Antofagasta wouldn't. The only reason that these companies are interested in these projects is because they could shift the risk on to my constituents and the people of Northern Minnesota. That is the only reason they're interested in these projects. And I think we have to really take a hard look at that. I mean, these are the kinds of things that these global corporations and these global corporate actors have done around the world, oftentimes in third world countries, taking advantage of the people there and the environment there, leaving a mess, exploiting labor, horrific fraud and all sorts of crimes. They're trying to do that here in Northern Minnesota right now because we're vulnerable economically. And it's wrong. So that's one thought I had. But I think that, you know, being in the minority, also, it is unfortunate because we were hoping that we would be able to really move on some strong environmental policy, both in regard to the copper sulfide mining in regards to the climate crisis, right? I mean, these years right now are critical decision-making years. The next 2 years and the next decade here, we're at change maker time here. So it's unfortunate, but it also gives us an opportunity during these next 2 years to, as others have said, really set the vision for what can be. You know, it's already been said that, you know, we're going to have to look forward to a new normal and figure that out. And I'm really looking forward to creating a better normal, a new normal where we're going to have a healthy economy that is restorative, that is sustainable, and that provides not just living wage jobs, but jobs where people can thrive and we can really have robust communities. And not depend on this sort of old school colonialist mentality of let's just take and take and take and take. And the natural environment will just keep on giving and there's no limit. You know, and we can just keep using and using and using and taking and taking. There's a new way, there's a better way, and we're right at the cusp of making that turn. And so now is a great opportunity for legislators like us to really be able to talk with our constituents, to work with citizen organizations and groups, and to set that tone for what's going to come next. So there's also opportunity in this moment of crisis and in our struggles that we're dealing with right now.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, I don't want to just keep saying I agree with everything, but you know, those are some great points all around, and we certainly are with you. You know, we're going to move into some of the audience questions now. The first question, this is kind of for everyone. I'm going to pose it to Governor Carlson first, but I'd like to hear everyone's take on it. someone asked Governor Carlson, you've talked in the past about ideas to help these economies, right? At the Friends, we want to help these economies, whether it's rural broadband, other ideas. It just can't be polluting Lake Superior and the Boundary Waters. But you've talked about the possibility of moving some state jobs up north. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then maybe the senators-elect could weigh in with their thoughts on those ideas.
Yeah, I think if you look at the problem simplistically, the metro area is overcrowded and rural area is underpopulated. And the pandemic has taught us something. It has taught us that you can work from home and maybe go to the office once a week instead of 5 days a week. And that's going to have an enormous impact on downtowns. Not to digress, but one piece of information, a real estate expert in Manhattan, New York, was asked, what was her assessment of the pandemic and the aftermath of the pandemic relative to commercial values in Manhattan? And her answer was anywhere from a loss of 40 to 70% in value. Cities better plan for a new way of surviving. And that's to the gain, if you will, of the immediate areas that surround the metropolitan areas. State government is all bunched in St. Paul. And one of the things that we can do and should do is take the Department of Natural Resources and the pollution control agencies that both are in the environmental business, and many of their activities are broad statewide. Particularly the DNR is very much oriented toward the north. That's where the hunting, fishing is largely located. And there's no reason in the world why the state can't bring 300-400 jobs into northern Minnesota. And those are well-paying jobs, and they're also permanent, and they're not only environmentally friendly, but the other thing is it gives the metropolitan area more input, if you will, from other regions of the state. It's a very, very healthy way to do it. I would approach it that way. And then also try to figure out, I'm an advocate of bringing the state planning agency back, but I would do it on a regional basis so that you can plan for this new economy that Jen was talking about. And I think President Biden is very much on track with that. And that is take the better benefits that spin off of the pandemic of distance and see if more and more people aren't willing to live outside and in those areas that are, let's say, within 100 miles of Minneapolis, St. Paul, or do the same thing in Rochester and do the same thing to a lesser extent in Duluth. But I think it's a doable proposition, but we got to plan for it.
All right, this is 2 Minnesotan. Lindsay, you go.
All right, there's a truck dumping something like behind my house. So if you hear weird noises, that's what it is. I completely agree with Governor Carlson. If there's anything we've learned from this pandemic, it's that jobs do not have to look the same as they have always looked. Mm-hmm. And there is tremendous opportunity to build, to take that expertise that exists all across Minnesota. People in Minnesota know the land around them. They know the state around them. They know the economy around them. They are the people that are best suited to help build the future economy, the future green economy, the future tech economy, the future medical economy. Like we talked about earlier, rural hospitals are facing tremendous concerns right now. And we need people around them that are most connected to them to be the ones that are working to help build these communities up in a way that supports, the values of our area and that lift up those areas. And so we need to be more creative in the legislature, in our state government, for sure. That is absolutely something that is our responsibility to do. But this pandemic has really given us an opportunity to do that. And I think we can, look at opening regional centers. I think would be a great idea. Different state hubs that have more of a specific eye on that part of the state, and folks in that part will have a stronger voice at that point. I think that's a great idea. And that's one of those things that it doesn't take a huge investment project to implement that. That is a change that we can make rather quickly, which is going to be necessary, in the economic recovery that we're going to need coming out of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to offer up something that takes zero innovation. For 20 some years, I've been working in workforce development around public works. One of the first things I'll do when I have staff to help me is identify just how many jobs there are out in city, county, and DOT/state public works offices. I recently got a new project working for the local road research board to help them find people to work for them. So there's 87 counties in Minnesota. There's probably 10 of them that are metro, and the rest are great places to work for people who live in Redwood County or in Cook County, et cetera. Those engineers are desperate for people to help them. So I think there's already jobs in those outstate cities and counties. I know because I've been hired by the local road research board to try to figure out ways for them to find people. There's 7 DOT, Department of Transportation districts that are located around the state. There's many, many jobs in those areas. I've recently developed a workforce training program with MnDOT to target the tribal nations and people who are working out looking for jobs, but living on those reservations. And I think the only reason we haven't expanded that is because of COVID. I used to be director of the construction management program at the U. The construction industry lost 50,000 workers in Minnesota during the recession, and we have not recovered. So in the area of highway heavy construction, we are desperate for people. And this is what I meant when I said earlier about controlling the conversation. There is this myth that there's no jobs in outstate or in greater Minnesota. That is in fact not true. But we need to make sure that people know about those jobs and we sell them as family supporting, house buying, upwardly mobile jobs, because they're there, but people don't really know what does it mean to be a county GIS worker. Well, it means a great job. So this is one area where I'm really excited to get the word out. And I love Governor Carlson's idea about distributing some of our state services. I think there's a huge opportunity there as well. And by the way, I do support Prove It First. I didn't say that last time. Jen.
It's my turn. Yeah, you know, I don't really have much to add. I agree with everything that's been said. These are all really exciting ideas. You know, as we sort of have found ourselves in this new situation with the pandemic, also being able to reimagine what it can be like to work, right? We don't have to leave our home, go to a location and work an 8-hour day and then come back home and then do it again the next day and do it 5 days a week. We can have more flexible work situations where people are living in Duluth or living in the cities or living rurally and then working in Duluth or working in the cities. They can work remotely. They can come down for a day or two. There's lots of flexibility with that. And then agreed, all these really innovative, creative ideas about, you know, moving the DNR up north, really looking at our agencies and the ways that we could distribute things out into the larger state instead of having them focused in the metro. Those are great ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a couple questions that are maybe more for the friends. So I would say if you have a question, you know, about our strategy or what we're going to be doing, please feel free to email me or Chris, our executive director, or our outreach coordinator, Maya. Maya will put all of our contact information in the chat. So if you have any questions, these are some great questions and we'd be happy to answer them. But want to keep them more focused on the panelists we have here today. So the next question, you know, I want to is a really good one, and it asks, you know, understanding that these are non-negotiable issues for us, you know, polluting Lake Superior and polluting, you know, the boundary waters obviously are non-negotiable. How can everyone, you know, not just the friends, but how can everyone, you know, yourselves, ourselves, our supporters, how can we bring this issue to people who maybe don't know about it or who don't necessarily agree with us in a way that can bring people together, you know, because we are such a divided country, unfortunately, right now. But, you know, at least at the Friends, we certainly feel like this should be a nonpartisan issue. And in fact, it's a bipartisan issue against us sometimes, unfortunately. And so, you know, everyone's very curious. What do you think we can do to bring this issue out in a way that brings people together? I'll go with Jen since she went last.
I can go. We could go different order this time. I don't want to step on everybody's toes, though. This is very
no. That's you, Jen. We want to hear from you.
No, you know, one of the things that I would say first of all is that I like to push back on this a little bit, because we know from surveys that have been done that people are with us on this issue. And it may seem sometimes, because of the rhetoric we hear, that we're in a minority and we're really, you know, struggling to try to educate people, and people are already educated. They're already with us. And I think the pushback that we're getting is from some very well-funded, very entrenched powers that be that like to make it seem like they represent more people than they do. And so there's just that, like, just to remind ourselves that people already are alarmed by these proposals, and they are following it enough to know that this is probably not a good idea for Minnesota. Even people on the range, the majority of citizens up on the range don't support these projects. And I think, you know, just so we keep doing what we've been doing. We have wonderful environmental organizations throughout our state, a number of them, including the Friends, Duluth for Clean Water, MCEA, a number of groups that are doing really important work in getting the word out. I also think it's important for legislators to speak out, and hopefully in us speaking out, we sort of open the door for other people to step up as well and to voice their concerns. And hopefully we get an evidentiary hearing as well, and that will sort of on the polymet issue, and people will learn from that. But I think that, you know, another piece, just real quick before I pass it on, is that the other thing that is crucially important, I think, for us in working on this issue is to never sort of poo-poo or dismiss the real economic concerns of people who are really worried about their economic futures. You know, in the United States, we stand alone in many ways, but in that we don't have universal health care for our population. We don't have a decent safety net. So really, people are totally dependent on their jobs for everything, for their most basic needs. And if they're not working, if they take a pay cut, if they're not able to find a good living wage job, they could literally be out on the street, literally. And we do have hundreds of people just in Duluth who sleep out on the street every single night. So these fears are real. They are real. And so that's been really important to me in talking to people who are supporting these mines. I know that their support is coming out of this sort of hope that could mean that they could have a revitalized community, that they could have an economy that was strong, and that people would be working and a lot would be happening. It would feel really good. And that's what they want. So I think it's incumbent upon us to create that. That's what we want. We want healthy economic revitalization of communities. And so that's what I'm going to be working for.
Amen. I mean, that's just exactly right. We won't get any further if we're not proactive about getting our message that we care, right? I mean, so this is not just, I don't care if you don't have a job, the environment is more important than you. I mean, that just falls flat on deaf ears. So we need to make sure that the message is constructed correctly. And it's maybe not one message, it's two messages, two strong messages. That one, we need to improve our healthcare safety net. We saw that during COVID. And if there's any time to get leverage on that, it's right now, when there are people who lost their jobs and subsequently lost their healthcare. And so maybe we untie these two issues. How can we make sure that we have a thriving Minnesota in all 87 counties? And how can we make sure we don't have sulfur mining? sulfur copper mining. I just want to add a few things. So recently there was an article in the Star Tribune about Purim not having enough people to fill all the jobs they have there because they have a few manufacturing companies that, you know, one is a natural pet food company, and it's just a great example about thinking outside the box. We know in War Road that Marvin Windows employs more people than are in the population of War Road. We know that we also have the same situation in Roseau. And so I think, to Governor Carlson's point and to really all of our point, we can just really think outside the box. How do we create major employers in rural Minnesota? And then people are happy and healthy and they have a house and they have health care, or we provide universal health care, by the way. We don't have to tie it to employment. And then we can talk about why the environment is also important.
Yeah, I'm completely with both of my colleagues, and I think that Jen is right. It is not a split public opinion on this. Actually, public opinion is very strongly with us on this. It is a difference of marketing dollars. They are spending a tremendous amount of money because their livelihood and large conglomerations have that money and want to continue to make huge amounts of money. And they do not live here. They do not care what the results are here. It is a bottom line thing for them. But it is our job to keep telling the human story, because that is how groups like Friends connects with people in the first place, is connecting to people's childhood connections to going to the Boundary Waters, of fishing in Minnesota lakes, of this intense pride that we have in the state of Minnesota and how much that is tied to our environment. And so the more that we continue to be out in our communities, telling these stories, lifting up the stories of people on all sides of this who care about the environmental thing, who are concerned about what their jobs will be. We have to tell those stories, and we have to have a vision that includes them all. And I think like my day job is tied to campaigning. I will always be an organizer at heart. And this is the core of it. It is telling human stories. It is putting those stories at the forefront. This is not a simple, we need these jobs and there's no other answer. That is not the story. And it's our job to tell them. And I think one of the things, and probably one of the reasons that we all connected with you and all of the folks watching today and all of the friends around the state of Minnesota, is because the three of us, along with most of our freshman colleagues, we're not going to wait. We're ready to tell that story now. We're not waiting for permission to have the perfectly crafted press release, because that's not what people hear. People hear real stories connected to real people. And that is what we are going to tell. And that is how we're going to continue to win on this issue, because we are winning in public opinion.
Well, let me, if I may, suggest something that can take us in a slightly different direction. For the last 3 years, we've been peddling virtue. And it sells everywhere except at the legislature. Therein lies the problem. Let me suggest a multi-pronged approach. One, the environment and our ability to live are not separate issues. Normally, the argument politically gets down to the environmentalists are a bunch of kooks and they're way out there somewhere doing something absurd. And the rest of us are normal and healthy with jobs, etc. But the reality is, if you don't have good, clean air to breathe, you will not survive. And likewise with water, and likewise with soil. People are not flocking to Flint, Michigan to live. What is left behind is total devastation for decade after decade after decade. Well-to-do people do not build mansions in Flint, Michigan. Hospitals do not hook up to the water system in Flint, Michigan. That's the price of disaster. What I would like to suggest is this, is that, and I think we've done a good job of discussing it, so I'm not going to go back over. We have a unified message, and I think the public understands it, and the public is with us. But the reality is the political system isn't. We have for decades pressed for disclosure laws. But the truth of the matter is disclosure laws are wholly inadequate. Dark money filters in from the outside to a major political party, to both political parties. It's not just focused on one. That money can be earmarked to a single legislative district. And it may come in the form of the Committee for Good Government. And when you disclose, you look on the disclosure sheet and say, well, what's wrong with the Committee for Good Government? What you don't know is maybe it's an arm of one of the mining corporations. The reality is, I think we should pay a lot of attention to Senator Whitehouse of Rhode Island. And what I hope the Biden administration does, and that is let's get into serious examination of dark money, how it operates, where it comes from, where it goes, and who benefits from it. And combine that with the message that we're discussing today, because I think a lot of the opposition is due to the fact that a lot of people are receiving undue amounts of money that are not properly disclosed to the public. I think dark money is a far more significant factor than we may think. And the sad part is it's in both political parties, because frankly, the Republican Senate would not grant a single hearing and the Democrat House would not grant a single hearing. That's the reality. And out of the governor's residence, total and complete silence, but everything that they've done indicates a very strong tie to Polymet and Glencore, everything, including the appointment of a Polymet person to the Board of Ethics to oversee campaign funding. That's the reality. And so I think we have to change politics.
As a candidate who had over $1 million in dark money spent on my race, I feel incredibly strongly with you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
To tell us about it.
In a number of races, I think it'll be over 10 by the time all the money comes out. Over $1 million in IE money and dark money that candidates are not connected to and have no control over was spent on our legislative races. In my district, it's going to be well over $1 million.
And so they were attacking you, is that correct?
Attacking and supporting. It came from both sides, but there were close to 70 mailers that were sent in my district. There was TV, there was intense digital. Yeah, it was an incredible amount of money that it's so difficult for voters to understand who that comes from and whether or not candidates have anything to say about that. It's very difficult for voters to tell the truth from the lies there. And they are not held to the same standards that candidates are for being truthful in what they're saying. And it really is damaging to our democracy.
Well, I thank you for sharing that.
Go ahead, Governor.
That story. That really is, that's very frightening, because you're now asking courageous people, and only courageous people, to enter the political system on the right side, if you will. And the rest are frankly petrified. And that's not how a good democracy operates. No, I applaud you. I mean that very sincerely, all three of you. I applaud you very, very much, because you fought against the odds and you prevailed. And it took a lot of guts to do it. Well done.
Well, I think that is the best word to leave it on. And I will point out that I follow Lindsey on social media, and she had a pretty good post about all the flyers, the mailers that that were sent one way or another, and it was pretty shocking. A couple of things I just want to leave everybody with. Please follow these three senator elects on social media. Make sure to like their pages to see what they're talking about. To follow their progress. We really appreciate all that they do for our cause. I do want to point out that this is Give to the Max week. This is a very big week in the nonprofit world, and tomorrow's Give to the Max day. The Friends, obviously, we like to think that we're doing, trying our best, doing some good work. And if you want to continue to support us, please make a donation tomorrow. It is big day, and will be a day to support all your favorite nonprofits. So just have to give you all that plug. But thank you so much to our esteemed panelists today. We really appreciate you being here. If you, like I said to the people that are watching, if you had questions that we weren't able to answer, please shoot them to me or to Chris, and we'll pass them along, and we'll make sure we get answers for those. But Everyone, thank you so much for your support, and we really appreciate you being here today. And to Senators-Elect, we can't wait to officially be able to call you senators and work with you on protecting Minnesota's clean water.
We can call them senators now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good ones at that.
Well, if Governor Carlson says it's okay, then I guess it's okay.
It's okay.
There it is.
Go to it.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks
This
for
was
having
great.
us.
Thanks everyone, and thanks everyone for signing on. We'll see everybody later.
Okay, thank you.